In the chant just now, we listed the 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. You may have noticed that the description of the last 3 was the longest. Those last 3 also have to deal with the practice of concentration. Right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration itself. You make an effort to get rid of unskillful qualities and to develop skillful ones. Now you start that with the practice of generosity and the practice of virtue. You try to get rid of your greed and your stinginess, the narrowness of the mind that doesn't want to help other people, by being generous with your time, generous with your things. That way you develop skillful qualities in place of the unskillful ones. The same with the practice of virtue. You abstain from harming others. You develop a mind of goodwill. And it not only is a mind of goodwill, but it finds its expression in what you do and say around other people. You develop good qualities in this way, abandon unskillful ones. You're getting the mind ready to practice concentration. Because virtue in particular is one of those things that is virtuous only if it's continuous. If it has big splotches and big gaps, you're not different from anybody else out there in the world. But if you can make it continuous, then it becomes a force in the mind. And then you take that principle of being continuous and trying to do what's skillful and abandon what's not. That becomes your right effort. And as the Buddha said, though, to maintain skillful qualities in the mind requires energy, requires nourishment. This is where mindfulness and concentration come in. Here the Buddha defines the factors that lead you from mindfulness to concentration. He lists in another place the 7 factors for awakening. You've got mindfulness. In other words, you keep in mind the fact that you want to have one topic here, like the breath. Or you could think about the different parts of the body. The Buddha has a list of 32 parts. You can visualize them to yourself. Just run through hair, the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin. Just start with the first 5. Those are the ones you see outside. You can think about, this is what makes the body attractive, but then if you had those things separately, a little pile of hair here, nails here, teeth there, skin there, you'd run away. There's so much of our attachment to the body is determined by these 5 things. You think about this to get a sense of dispassion, and a sense of samvega, a sense that you've been looking for happiness in the wrong places. And if you don't change your ways, you're going to keep on going to the wrong places. So you choose one topic, and then you put aside all thoughts about the world outside. And to do that, you have to develop 3 qualities: mindfulness, ardency, alertness. Mindfulness is keeping things in mind, keeping in mind the fact that you want to stay here, and then remembering that when skillful and unskillful things come up in the mind, what you should do. Alertness is what watches what's actually going on in the mind. What are you doing right now? Are you staying with the breath? Are you wandering off? If you find yourself wandering off, that's when ardency comes in. Remind yourself you're not here to wander, you're here to stay. So you bring the mind back. And then while you're here, ardency means you try to get as sensitive as possible how the breathing feels right now, how your body feels right now. Does the body feel at ease? Can you create a sense of ease by the way you breathe? What rhythm of breathing would do that? And also what texture, heavy or light, deep, shallow, fast, slow. Experiment for a while to see what feels best. And then when you get a sense of ease with the breath, think of the whole body breathing, all the nerves, all the blood vessels, just energy of the breath running through the whole body in this way. This allows the mind to settle down with a sense of ease. They've done that by analyzing what's going on and what can be adjusted. Then you do what needs to be done. A sense of refreshment comes from that, a sense of calm. From the calm, the mind can get concentrated, and the more deeply it goes into the concentration, finally it arrives at a state of equanimity, where it's really solidly based. It's not easily shaken by anything. It's on that basis that you can look at things really clearly in the mind. Now the Buddha divides these 7 factors for awakening: the mindfulness, the analysis, the right effort, sense of refreshment, calm, concentration, equanimity, into 3 categories. Mindfulness is what governs everything else. And then you look at the mind. You're trying to get the mind into what's called a state of jhana. The word jhana, absorption, relates to a verb which also means to burn with a steady flame. Pali has lots of different verbs for burning. Like jalati would be burning like an ordinary fire with flames that flicker here and there. Jayati, which is the verb associated with jhana, means to burn with a steady flame like an oil lamp. You can read by an oil lamp because the flame is steady. The same way, you want a steady focus in the mind, steady focus in the body. And to get that flame just right, you have to look at the state of the mind. If it's sluggish, it's like a flame that's going to go out. In which case you have to give it more energy. That's what the factors of analysis and persistence and refreshment do. They give more energy to the mind. If it's going too high, you calm it down with the calm, the concentration, and equanimity. So you read your mind, look at what's going on, and then you make adjustments accordingly. This is an important part of the practice. Sometimes it's understood that you gain insight into the mind by simply watching whatever comes up and noting it, letting it go, noting it, letting it go. The Buddha never teaches that. He says you learn about the mind by trying to do something with it, get it into concentration. It's like learning about eggs. You can sit there and watch eggs go past, like eggs on an assembly line. But what do you learn about eggs? Nothing much. You learn what color they have, what shape they have. But if you really want to understand eggs, you try to make something with them. Soufflés, scrambled eggs, fried eggs, shired eggs, steamed eggs. I read about a research institute in France. This is very French. They have research institutes that study cooking. They discovered the ideal temperature for soft-boiled eggs, the ideal temperature for hard-boiled eggs, by doing things with them. The same way you learn about your mind, by doing something with it, getting the mind into concentration and balancing it. When the energy is too high, you calm it down. When the energy is too low, you give it more oomph. And in doing that, you learn a lot about your mind. What works, what doesn't work. That's when you gain real insight. The Buddha makes another analogy. He says, like being a goldsmith. If the goldsmith were to put the gold in the fire and just leave it in the fire, it would burn up. If he were to simply look at it, nothing would happen. If he were to blow on it, nothing much would happen either. But he knows when to put it in the fire, when to take it out and blow on it, when to look at it, to figure out what needs to be done, decide whether it's ready or not to make into a ring or an earring. It's having that combination of skills, the blowing, the putting in the fire, and the looking. That's what enables him to be a skillful goldsmith. In the same way as a good meditator, you have to know when to put extra effort into correcting what's wrong with the mind right now, when to calm it down in concentration, and when to look at it with equanimity. That's when you get the mind in the state that you really want. Now all of this has to be driven by the motivation to want to get the mind trained. This requires seeing the need for having a trained mind. That's why we have that chant every now and then. The world is swept away, it does not endure. Offers no shelter, there's no one in charge. The world has nothing of its own, one has to pass on, leaving everything behind. And then it's a slave to craving. It's good to reflect on these things, because no matter how well our lives are going, we're going to die. And death is like a trap door. It comes suddenly and you're out. And what's going to receive you as you go through the trap door, that's going to depend on your actions. And how you handle the whole situation depends on the state of your mind. Ideally, you want to get to a state that doesn't die. That's what the Buddha's news is, basically. When he decided to teach, the first thing he said was, "Open are the doors to the deathless. Let those with ears show forth their conviction." In other words, he had found something that doesn't die. A happiness was not touched by death because it's outside of space and time. It's an amazing discovery. We hear talk about the deathless, and it's become just kind of a standard word that begins to mean very little because it's just left that way. But when we really think about it, the big problem in life is that no matter what pleasures we have, no matter what wealth we have, relationships we have, we're going to die at some point. And we have to prepare. And the best way to prepare is to find something that doesn't die. There's the body can die, but there's something that's touched by the mind that doesn't die at all. And that's safe. So think about that possibility. And then look at all the things you go for in the world that would get in the way of that possibility. It all comes down to the fact the mind isn't trained. Those 4 reflections come from a sutta where a king has asked a monk why he ordained. The king was of the impression that people would ordain if they were poor, they had lost their relatives, if they were sick, if they're old. But this was a young monk he was talking to, who came from a wealthy family. His relatives were still fine. So why did he ordain? And the young monk answered with these reflections. He had heard from the Buddha, the world is swept away, it does not endure. So the king asked, what do you mean by that? And the young monk said, when you were young, were you strong? And the king said, yes, I was very strong. I knew nobody else as strong as I was in battle. How about now? No, well, now I'm 80 years old. Sometimes I mean to put my foot in one place and it goes someplace else. Aging, inconstancy. That's what we find in the world. Second reflection. The world offers no shelter, there's no one in charge. Here, of course, he's talking to a king, and the king thinks he's in charge. So he asks, what do you mean by that? The monk says, do you have a recurring illness? The king says he has a recurring wind illness, which means shooting pains going through the body. In Thailand, it's usually associated with heart disease. He says sometimes there are times when I'm lying in bed full of pain, and the courtiers are standing around saying, maybe he's going to go this time, maybe he's going to go this time. Think about that. Courtiers depend on him, but they also can't wait for him to go. So the young monk says, can you order them to take some of that pain and share it out among them so you don't have to feel all the pain on your own? The king says, no. I have to bear that pain myself. So here he is, even though he's a king, he can't get out of the pain that comes from having a body when you get old and sick. So there's the truth of illness, stress, suffering. And then the third reflection, the world has nothing of its own, one has to pass on, leaving everything behind. Here, of course, the king has treasures of all kinds. So what do you mean, nobody has anything of their own? And the young monk asks him, that wealth you have, can you take it with you after you die? The king says, no, I have to leave it behind and just go on in line with my karma. Death, not self. Another characteristic of the world. And finally, the fourth one, slave to craving. The king says, what do you mean by that? He doesn't like being called a slave. The young monk asks him, if there was someone to come from the east and say there's a kingdom to the east which has lots of wealth with a very weak army, you could take it with your army. Would you want it? Would you go ahead and do it? The king says, of course I would. Here he is, 80 years old. He's been made to reflect on the fact that he's going to die and can't take anything with him. Body is falling apart. Yet he'd still go for another kingdom. How about a kingdom to the west? Of course. North, yes. South, yes. Other side of the ocean, yes. That's what the monk says. Well, that's what I mean by a slave to craving. The world is marked by all these things, aging, illness, and death. And yet we keep coming back for more. Aging, illness, and death again. Aging, illness, and death again. And so there's the prospect of getting out of that. That's why he ordained. This kind of reflection is meant to induce what's called a state of samvega. When you think about it, if your mind doesn't get trained, this is what life is going to be. The next life, and the next life, and the next. You keep coming back for more aging, illness, and death. Again and again. That should induce a sense of dismay. That, of course, just having dismay would leave you in depression. But the Buddha offers the alternative. There is this deathless dimension which can be found through our own efforts. It's not created by our efforts, because otherwise it wouldn't be deathless. But there's a path that leads there, like the road to the Grand Canyon. It doesn't cause the Grand Canyon, but if you follow the road, you get there. To have confidence that there is that road, and it's humanly possible to get there. So the choice is yours. Do you want to stay coming back again and again, or find something that offers safety? This is why we train the mind, because it's through a trained mind that safe dimension can be found. As the Buddha said, it's the ultimate happiness. As he once told somebody, if you have any idea that there would be any pain or regret or sorrow after you've gone there, he says that's wrong view. It's the highest happiness. It's higher than you can imagine. So this is why we train the mind. We don't just observe the mind, watch the mind as it does its thing. We try to bring it to a state of good, solid concentration. In the course of doing that, we learn a lot about it. And learning about the mind, that's when we learn to see through the ways in which it prevents itself from realizing that deathless state, and how it can overcome those obstacles. It's all right here. All these potentials are right here. To make sure you master the full set of skills, not only the watching, but also the cooling down and the heating up, adding fuel to the fire when it's wavering, putting some dust and water on it when it's burning too high, so you can get that steady flame of the mind in right concentration, so you can watch it clearly, so you can read your mind. That's when you have a chance of discovering what potentials it has.